All right, welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving deep into the 2026-2027 Bangladesh national budget. And honestly, this is a genuinely fascinating document. Why? Because it was just presented by Finance Minister Amir Khosrow Mahmud Chowdhury right on the heels of a massive, historic political transition. The whole thing is essentially framed around rebuilding, reshaping, and totally redirecting the country's economic trajectory. So let's just jump right in and see exactly what this new government has mapped out.
To help us wrap our heads around this massive document, we've broken this explainer down into 6 key parts. We'll start with the economic context and strategy, then look at some macroeconomic comparisons, run through the 2026-27 budget overview, dive into education and healthcare allocations, hit agriculture and social safety, and finally wrap up with infrastructure, tech, and employment.
Okay, Part 1, Economic Context and Strategy.
Now, the budget presentation actually laid out 10 core priority areas, and the finance minister framed the current economic situation as a massive, urgent recovery effort. In the speech, the new administration specifically pointed to what they described as severe mismanagement and institutional damage by the previous regime. Because they're framing it this way, the budget's priorities lean really heavily into restoring financial stability, pushing for inclusive growth, and aggressively using technological advancement to basically jumpstart the entire economy.
So, how do they actually plan to achieve all this? Well, the government introduced what they're calling the 3R strategy. It's basically a clear 3-step timeline for economic revitalization. Step 1 is recovery and stabilization, and that's just for the immediate first year. Step 2 is restoration, which covers years 1 through 3. And finally, Step 3 is reconstruction for acceleration, aiming for a thriving, accelerated economy within 5 years. It's a highly structured approach meant to transition the country completely away from a debt-reliant model.
Moving on to Section 2, Macroeconomic Comparisons. The speech used some pretty stark comparisons to make its point, pitting the economic health from 2 decades ago against the immediate past. Just think about these numbers for a second. GDP growth fell from 6.78% down to an expected 3.49%, while inflation shot up to over 11%. But maybe the most shocking figure? Default loans in the banking sector surged from 13.6% to nearly 36%. The administration is using these specific figures to really hammer home the urgency of their stabilization efforts.
But hands down, the most dramatic comparison they highlighted was the skyrocketing foreign debt. Back in 2005-2006, foreign debt stood at 1.03 lakh crore taka. By 2023-2024, it had multiplied to a whopping 8.12 lakh crore taka. The current administration points right at this ballooning debt as the #1 reason they have to pivot and pivot fast. They want to shift the nation away from relying on debt and move toward an economy driven by private investment and domestic equity.
All right, let's get into Section 3, the 2026-27 budget overview.
The total budget for this fiscal year is an absolutely staggering 9.38 lakh crore taka. To put that massive number into perspective, it represents about 13.7% of the entire national GDP, and it's a jump of 1.48 lakh crore taka compared to just last year. So yeah, we are talking about a massive financial commitment here.
When you break down how they're actually spending that money, you see a very deliberate prioritization. Social infrastructure takes the biggest slice of the pie at nearly 30%. That puts it ahead of general services and even physical infrastructure. And this makes sense. It aligns directly with their stated goal of shifting focus toward human capital. They're basically saying they want to invest heavily in the people themselves, rather than just pouring money into concrete and steel.
To guide all this spending, the government has set some incredibly ambitious targets for the year 2030. They're aiming to aggressively boost GDP growth to 8.5%, all while slashing inflation way down to 5%. On top of that, they plan to bump up foreign direct investment to 2.7% of the GDP. It's safe to say this is a pretty bold vision for achieving macroeconomic stability.
Section 4. Education and healthcare allocations.
This brings us to a huge milestone. For the very first time, education spending is being pushed to a full 2% of the total GDP. That's over 1.36 lakh crore taka. The finance minister actually pointed out that this is the highest allocation for education the country has literally ever seen. It really marks a major philosophical shift in how the state is valuing learning and development.
So what does all that money actually buy? Well, it funds a complete curriculum overhaul, focusing heavily on tech, vocational skills, and global competitiveness. For instance, they're introducing a mandatory third language, think Japanese, Arabic, or French, just to get students ready for the global market. They're also rolling out this cool One Teacher, One Tab program that integrates AI in the classroom. Plus, they're offering completely free education for women all the way up to graduation and kicking off vocational training as early as the 6th grade. The goal? Building a truly skill-driven economy.
Healthcare is seeing a similar kind of boost with a record jump to 1.10% of the GDP. The strategy here is really interesting. It's a distinct shift away from just, treating people once they're already sick. Instead, they're pivoting hard toward preventative care and trying to establish true universal health coverage, literally from birth to old age.
And that high-level strategy trickles down into some very specific initiatives. There's a clear push to decentralize medical care. Basically, they want to bring facilities directly to rural and local communities by setting up modern primary care units in every single ward. And to actually staff all these new clinics, they're immediately hiring 5,000 new doctors and an incredible 1 lakh health workers. And get this, 80% of those new health workers will be women. On top of all that, they're rolling out universal e-health cards for every citizen to totally modernize medical records. Okay, Section 5, Agriculture and Social Safety.
The government's agricultural strategy here is incredibly direct, very hands-on. Out of a 43,335 crore taka allocation, they're rolling out these farmer cards for 42.5 lakh farmers, which provides direct cash assistance. They're also stepping in to wipe out small agricultural loan interest up to 10,000 taka, just to help secure the national food supply chain. And I honestly find this part really fascinating. They're implementing a water body to the fishermen policy. This effectively opens up local canals and water bodies strictly for poor local fishing communities to help protect their livelihoods.
When it comes to protecting marginalized populations, the numbers are just massive. An unprecedented 1.44 lakh crore taka has been allocated solely for social safety nets. The whole idea here is to create a life cycle protection system, meaning they want to support citizens from the day they are born right through to old age.
So where is all that safety net money actually going? Well, we're seeing targeted monthly support, like family cards giving 2,500 taka a month to 41 lakh women. There are also disability allowances and some pretty fantastic perks for senior citizens, like completely free train rides. And notably, in direct response to the recent political transition, the budget includes a specific monthly stipend of 20,000 taka for the families of those who died in the July mass uprising. It's a move that officially brings those affected by the recent events under the state's financial protection.
Finally, Section 6, Infrastructure, Tech, and Employment. It is very clear the government is actively pivoting toward a tech-driven future. For young and female entrepreneurs, they're putting up a significant 500 crore taka startup fund. We're also seeing the groundwork being laid to essentially turn the country into an AI and semiconductor manufacturing hub. And on a more day-to-day practical level, free high-speed Wi-Fi is already being rolled out in major transit hubs. Plus, to make sure foreign currency keeps flowing in smoothly, they're keeping that 2.5% cash incentive for legal remittances sent home by overseas workers. But it's not just about traditional tech. They're also officially bringing the creative economy right into the mainstream economic plan. This means they're investing in local artisans through a One Village, One Product initiative, focusing on things like pottery, weaving, and, yes, even digital content creation. They're even building a massive central creative hub in Porpachal. As for everyday employment infrastructure, they're setting up employment exchanges in every single district and introducing an exclusive, safe, pink bus service for female workers.
So, stepping back, this budget clearly outlines a massive shift. It's moving away from a debt-reliant system and putting its chips heavily on human capital, digital innovation, and wide-reaching social safety nets. As we wrap up this explainer, we want to leave you with a question to chew on. As the nation attempts this completely historic economic transition, how will these ambitious investments in AI, universal healthcare, and the creative economy end up reshaping your own future? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and keep asking questions.